Breaking news from Madison, Wisconsin, which of course has been the center of American news for the past 3 weeks at least. Tonight, the Republicans in Wisconsin State Senate appear to have invented a new nuclear option for passing legislation with no notice and no quorum and no debate. They invented that new nuclear option today, and then they detonated it today. After Republican Governor Scott Walker admitted yesterday that he would negotiate with Democrats on his union stripping bill, after a Republican source tells NBC News that the governor said to Republicans in the legislature today that he was willing to compromise on union stripping, after public support for the governor and the union stripping measure started low and then cratered from there, after weeks and weeks of large demonstrations in Wisconsin against the governor and the Republican plan, including some very, very large demonstrations, and the Republican response to that of locking down the state capitol. After all of that, Republicans in Wisconsin State Senate tonight tried to pull a rabbit out of a hat. The way Democrats had stopped the bill, remember, was that they left the state. They denied Republicans the quorum they would need to convene in order to pass the union stripping bill. The Wisconsin rules are that no bill with fiscal implications can be considered without a certain number of senators present. Republicans needed at least one Democrat to show up to the Senate in order to meet that numerical threshold. Democrats fled the state so that quorum could not be reached, so the bill could not be voted on. Then tonight, with no warning, Republicans announced that they took everything budget-related out of what they were calling the budget bill, leaving only the union stripping provisions. Republicans, of course, had insisted that union stripping was a fiscal issue, but tonight, in order to try to pull this rabbit out of a hat, they decided it wasn't a fiscal issue anymore and that therefore they no longer needed that pesky quorum. And with no warning, they convened a conference committee, Democrats say in violation of the state's open meeting law. The last-minute conference committee passed the union stripping bill. Here's what this looked like. This was absolutely nuts. Watch this.
I have consulted with the Legislative Council, the Legislative Reference Bureau, and the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, and have been advised that this proposal would not trigger the special quorum requirement in Article 8, Section 8 of the Wisconsin Constitution. At this time, I would move to adopt the adoption of the proposal.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
As the conference
Mr. Chairman,
report.
excuse me. I have a question about the open meetings rule being violated.
Take a
You
moment.
were not given 2 hours notice, first of all.
Step back
Secondly,
for 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Think about what
there's a
you're doing
requirement.
here.
I have like a 24-hour notice here from Attorney General Van Hollen, the current Attorney
Representative
General.
Bartlett, let me discussion. Let me recognize you. Discussion. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Mr. Chairman, and most importantly, before we even get started, obviously I'm going to want to have a summary of this bill from our Director Lang, so I understand what's in here.
It's the same bill you debated for 60 hours.
Oh, there's nothing different?
No, they just removed items from it.
They removed what?
Removed items. Nothing new.
Oh, so we can get a description of what was removed.
There's nothing new.
Well, you said things were removed, Mr. Chairman. I want to know what's removed. It seems to me that the body should add, our committee should know what we're voting on. I don't know what was removed. I need to know that. So I do want a description from Director Lang. Secondly, I have a couple of motions I would like to make as amendments to this.
No motions.
Clearly,
no motions will be
conference committees, do have an opportunity for people to amend a bill.
No, there's no motion.
So I want to be able to present those. But before we even get into that, I want to say that this is a violation of the open meetings law. It is required. I got a memo here from our current Attorney General, not a past one, the current one, August of 2010. The attorney, no Wisconsin court decision will allow meetings unless you have good cause to provide less than 24 hours notice of a meeting.
Okay.
The provision, like all other provisions of the open meetings laws, must be construed in favor of providing the public with the fullness and most complete information.
Representative Barca.
If there's any,
Clerk call roll.
No, excuse me.
No, listen, it says if there's any doubt as to whether good cause exists, the governmental body should provide 24 hours notice. This is clearly a violation of the open meetings law. Now, look, you've been shutting people down. It is improper for you to move forward while this is a violation of the open meetings law. You're not allowing amendments, and that is wrong. Now, Mr. Chairman, this is a violation of law. This is not just a rule, it is the law. There must be... No, Mr. Chairman, this is a violation of the open meetings law. It requires 24, at least 2 hours notice.
What have you done?
Okay. Excuse me.
Including that weird music thing at the end, that's how we all saw it. That was the Wisconsin Legislative Coverage Service wrapping up with that tidy little music after the Democratic Assembly leader is shouting that the meeting that he is in is illegal, is a violation of the state's open meeting law. He's saying that as they decide that they're just going to call the roll over him. And he's saying, this is illegal, this is illegal, this is illegal. And they're saying, we're adjourned. And then a nice little musical interlude. After that bizarre scene in that hastily convened conference committee, Republicans essentially rammed the Senate and immediately convened the state Senate, again, with no Democrats present, with no quorum. They passed the bill immediately, 18-1, and then they immediately adjourned. Took moments. If Republicans legally had this option of doing it this way, did they not have this option of doing it this way all along? Why didn't they use it before? It's not like Republicans were debating this thing on the merits all along. Remember, they tried to arrest the Senate Democrats. They took over the Senate Democrats' offices. They were threatening to send private security, essentially bounty hunters, after the Democrats. They were taking the Democrats' parking places. But all along, they could have just done this anytime they wanted to, and they just decided to do it tonight. Where did they find this rabbit, and what hat have they just pulled it out of? Democratic leadership in the legislature says the Republicans' actions tonight were as illegal as they were surprising. That the Republicans never used this option for getting their way before because this option does not legally exist. Democrats say they are contacting the state's attorney general to try to block tonight's actions. The shouts of protesters could be heard outside that dark conference committee room tonight as the Republicans suddenly convened, suddenly voted, and suddenly adjourned. After Republicans lost the public debate on this issue, after Democrats and the anti-union stripping protesters won the public debate on this issue, after Wisconsin took to the streets and Democratic senators held out and they won on the substance, after that most important result really was nailed down and finalized, Republicans tried to find a desperate way to cram it through anyway tonight, after they lost the argument. Protesters are reassembling in Madison at the Capitol right now.